Beginning of the show. Oh.
Today's episode of the Inside EVs podcast is brought to you by E-Range EV Tyre. E-Range EV tyres are specifically engineered for electric vehicles. Using an advanced manufacturing process called liquid phase mixing, E-Range EV's EcoPoint 3 technology creates a tyre with lower rolling resistance and longer range, while offering low levels of wear and high grip. All this while staying affordable. Go to erangetires.com. That's ERANGE tires.com to find your EV's next set of tyres.
Hello, and welcome to the Inside EVs podcast for May the 12th, 2023. This is episode number 162. Thanks for joining us. On today's show, we'll be talking about attending the CharIN Volts Festival, or Testival, the first deliveries of Fisker Ocean, and Tesla breaking ground on the first lithium processing plant in the US, and of course, much, much more. I'm Dominic Ioni, Inside EV's editor and forum moderator. Joining us today is the ebullient Mr. Tom Moloughney, senior editor at Inside EVs and host of the YouTube channel State of Charge. We also have the multi-dimensional Mr. Martin Lee from EV News Daily podcast, which is available on all the best podcast platforms. And of course, Kyle Connor joins us from the majestic, practically palatial halls of Out-of-Spec Studios, where he produces high-voltage videos for a number of YouTube channels. So welcome, everybody.
Good morning. Sorry I missed the show last week. As a country, we all had to stop and watch an old man who inherited a hat from his mother sit on a big chair whilst we all watched. That's where actually that Friday was the build up to it. Saturday was the main event, but I couldn't be here because my son was having a garden party at his school to celebrate aforementioned old man with hat, and so which I had to be at as a dad. So I couldn't get on the podcast last week, but
special.
We're all now fully signed up with a new king. So yay for the monarchy.
A special welcome back to you, Martin. I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding. I thought maybe you were going to be the King of England.
Well, I did put my CV in, but apparently it's a job you have to be born into, which was news to me. I can't believe that.
Sounds like nepotism.
Well, maybe for the next generation, they'll open up. It'll be like The Apprentice next time, maybe. But for now, apparently he had dibs on the job. Well, he didn't need to have dibs on the job. He could have said, "Hey, I passed it on to the next generation." But I think he fancied a go. I'm sure it's fun. You get free food and all your housing paid for. So that sounds like a nice gig.
Oh, nice t-shirt there you got on. Well, Martin, you'll be our king of podcasting, which is at least as cool, I think.
Hey, I want to be nobody's king. I'll happily just slum it with everybody. Thank you.
All right. Hey Tom, what's that t-shirt you got on there?
Well, I lifted it up because John asked me, say, Tom, show us your full shirt. This is an old school BMW i3 shirt that was made in, actually you couldn't even buy these. It was when the i3 first came out. There's a long backstory that I'm not going to get into, but basically the BMW i team here in the US made these shirts and sold them for a charity. So it was related to somebody that they knew. And so it was pretty cool. I'm going to keep this shirt forever because it's got a really cool backstory, and I think it looks cool. So
yeah, it's a great design.
These were I saw these on like eBay like months later for like $50. People were selling them because there were like a lot of people like, hey, that's a cool shirt. I have an i3. Can I buy them? And it was like, no, you couldn't. They printed up a certain amount of them. And as I said, they raised some money for a good cause.
Right on. All right, so let's talk about what we've been up to this week before we get into some news. So, Tom, I think you mentioned last week that you had the Webasto Gold Dual Voltage Portable EV Charger review going up soon, and it did. So, and I urge everybody to hit up the State of Charge website or the channel to watch the whole thing. But generally speaking, how did it hold up to your battery of tests?
So it actually did very well. It's a pretty well made item. And the only failure that I had, and there's a long story about that, which I'm going to take some time to talk about right now. The only failure that I found was in the submersion test, as the followers know, when I get a charger that's IP67 or higher, that's NEMA 6 rated. It's supposed to, if you look up the code, it's supposed to be able to be submerged in up to 3 feet of water or 1 meter of water for up to 30 minutes. So when I get units that are IP67 rated, I do just that. I've only done it to 3 units so far. I did the Juice Booster Plus, or the J Plus booster here in the US because of naming rights, and it passed the test. And then I did it with the Pear Gear 2 most recently, and it was an epic failure where the entire body of the unit completely filled with water. Like, it wasn't just a little water got in there. You see me in the video just draining the water as water's just pouring out. So that's really a low quality, budget charger that I don't recommend anybody buy. But the Webasto is a pretty solid, well-known unit. As a matter of fact, it's original equipment portable charger for many companies. GM's used it. Ford uses it now for the Mustang Mach-E and the Lightning. Volkswagen either still uses it or had at one point. It's a well-made, safety certified portable charger. I figured it would be a good idea because I get a lot of requests now for people asking me for a portable charger to carry around. Everybody wants dual voltage chargers. That means it can plug into both 120 volt outlet and a 240 volt circuit. So I'm going to get a few of these now and do some comprehensive reviews. So getting back to the only test that it failed, the submersion test. And that's the Pear Gear that I did. For those watching on YouTube, you could see it turned red. And that was only like 10 seconds after I put it in. And I shook the body and water just poured out. Wow. While the Webasto did fault, it was a soft fault. If you notice here, I put the adapter in, I plug it into an extension cord, and I drop it in. And before I could even plug the unit in to my Rivian, you'll watch, you can almost see if you're watching on YouTube now, as soon as I put it in, look at the light in the bucket, boom, it's already red right there. So it faulted. But the good thing about it was after I took it out, dried out the connector, it worked perfectly. So this is a soft fault, not a hard fault. It didn't damage the equipment. Look how tight that adapter is. I'm surprised water got in there, but it did. I could feel it with my finger. So what happened here was some water intruded into the pins enough to trigger a soft fault to shut the unit down for safety reasons, but it didn't ruin the unit. So the video gets posted, and as always, the manufacturer contacts me. Whenever I do my reviews, all the manufacturers contact me. They all want to tell me that the unit's better than what I found, or just like Autel contacted me and said, Tom, based on your review, we're gonna engineer a new cable. We're gonna put a new cable on this unit, which is fantastic, and they did. They have now. But so Webasto contacted me and they said, hey, love your review. Things came out really good. Everything seemed pretty straightforward. There's only 2 things that we have issue with. Number one, it may have faulted because you used an extension cord, which you're not supposed to. But I have an industrial grade extension cord, NEMA 1450 extension cord. The cable itself cost me $400. It's an extremely high quality industrial grade extension cable, and I use it for all my portable charging equipment. It's not the extension cable. And as you can see, as soon as I put it in, it faulted. So then they went on, and this is the most intriguing part of it. They said, look, our engineers would like to talk to you about IP67 ratings. And if you look up the IP67 rating, it says the unit should be able to be submerged for 1 meter for 30 minutes. But what they don't say, and what I didn't realize, is the unit doesn't have to be plugged in at the time in order for it to pass the test. As a matter of fact, manufacturers are allowed to submerge their units, take them out, dry them out, and then plug them in. And if they work, they pass the test. I was not aware of that. If you read the code, it doesn't say anywhere in the code that it allows you to do that. I have reached out to IEC to try to get the exact coding, but Webasto has basically read it to me, so I trust they're not lying to me directly, but I'm going to confirm that. And if that is the case, I'm going to change the way I do my submersion testing, submerge the units in 30 inches of water for 30 minutes, take them out, let them fully dry out. The next day, retest them. So, I want to be clear about that. But in my opinion, it still is it's a soft fail because water did intrude in. But from what Webasto's telling me is that is allowed in the code as long as it doesn't cause a catastrophic failure, which it didn't. In that regards, the Webasto passed the test. The Pear Gear, as you saw, what Martin brought up, completely failed the test. That's something that I found interesting. Look, I'm constantly looking to improve my testing protocol. I take it really serious what I do when I review these units. I don't want to be unfair to them. I spend a lot of time. I take 2 to 3 weeks to review one charger. That's why I don't put them out every day or two. I really try to be fair to the units and fair to the followers. So I want to be clearly transparent about that. I may slightly change how I do my submersion test. Okay, moving on to the full review. It did very well. Even with that, it scored a 4.4 out of 5 star. It's still one of the highest rated chargers I've had, portable chargers at least. And also, if you notice on the top of that charger rater, it says portable charger rater. I've now created a new charger rating system just for portable charging equipment because my old charger rater really wasn't aligned with the needs and duties of a portable charger. So now I have a new charger rating system that's dedicated just for portable chargers.
Nice. It makes you wonder if the Pear Tree would have passed the test if it was fully allowed to dry out after such a short amount of time submersed.
Martin, if I thought that it was even a possibility, I'd buy another one and do it. But as you could see, it was completely filled with water. The electronics I can't imagine that could have passed. Maybe I'll try it just for the hell of it. They're not that expensive. But the reason why the Webasto and what they explained to me is the reason why I should consider it a pass was water did not get into the body of the unit. It only got to the edge of the connectors where the adapter where and that's watertight from the innards of the unit. So what water is allowed to get in there is what they're telling me. Water cannot be allowed to get into the entire body of the electronics as it did with the Pear Gear, as you saw, where I dumped out 12 ounces of water. The thing completely filled up. I mean, any electronics, pour that much water on your keyboard and you're going to fry it, even if it's not turned on,
Well, keep us updated on what the testing body comes back and says, because I think there's probably an assumption that if something is rated to be submersed for for whatever the time limit is, for whatever the depth, if I buy an Apple Watch and it says I can go swimming with it, I don't want to contact the standards body and say, yeah, but does that mean it's got to be turned off and then I've got to dry my watch out? I assume Apple means I can wear it in the shower. So, and I'm not saying that IP67, I don't know what this IP rated is for phones and watches, but I think there's also, I'd like to hear what the standards body say, because when you see something is rated for a certain, submersed 1 meter or whatever, then you think, well, I presume that means it doesn't have to be disconnected from the electricity and then allowed 24 hours to dry out. That's
exactly.
If that's what it is, it's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. It's just perhaps misleading assumptions on the parts of consumers that, is the reason you have your channel, is the reason you educate all of us.
Yeah. And I mean, you can even see on the Webasto website, one of the facts, the questions is, what happens if it falls in water? And their answer is no, nothing. It's completely waterproof. There's no problem. They don't say if it falls in water, remove it, let it dry out, and then you can use it. Their answer is, oh, don't worry about it. There's no problem. It's waterproof. So, there's a little bit on that side. That while I'm glad they pointed that out to me, they could do a better job of saying that, and then I had one commenter say, and since you're talking about Apple products, my iPhone is rated for you can drop it in a pool, but I don't expect to be able to go underwater diving and call my friend. It really isn't apples to apples, but in any event, I wanted to point that out. Otherwise, it's a good unit. It's definitely one of my recommended portable charging units. Those things are pretty well made. They have the 2 adapters that come with it. They're safety certified. 2 negatives that I'll say is on it is that it's expensive, $549, which is expensive. But my top rated portable charger cost even more. The J Plus booster, that's like $700. But you get what you pay for sometimes, guys. I know everybody's rushing to Amazon and they click on lowest to highest price wise,
right.
and then you end up with the Pair Gear, and then you get a light drizzle outside and the thing blows up while it's charging your car. So don't fall for that race to the bottom, everyone, and buy the cheapest thing that you can. Spend $100 or $2 more. Get high quality items, and they'll last a long time, and you'll be safer.
Right on.
I know I say that every week, but I'm going to continue to say it because people still are rushing out there to buy the cheapest stuff. I'm on the forums all the time, and people. I was just talking to somebody recently. They're like, "Why are you spending all that money on that?" I bought a Must Start three months ago for $199. It's great. And my response was, yeah, I actually call those must melts, not must darts, because it will melt eventually.
Wow.
If you use it, if you use it once a year, you might get, quite a few years out of it. But if you use one of the must start portable chargers as your daily charger, I promise you it will melt. I don't know when, but at some point it will melt. And the least problem you'll have is just it melted.
Right.
It could be a much more serious problem.
Yeah, I charged our first Renault Zoe off the 3-pin plug, so 240 volts here. So that would be 3 kilowatts maybe for the first months of owning that vehicle, and knowing that I was getting away with it. There was the charger provided by Renault was good. It was on my separate garage circuit, which is a 7 kilowatt new circuit with a new consumer unit, a new board in my garage. So, and it's got all the latest. What are they called? RCDs or whatever things that trip. I've got all of that, but still, a 3-pin plug gets really, really hot after 6, 8, or 10 hours. Yeah. Like one day that would have melted.
Yeah. If you kept using it, and if you left it outside, like if direct sunlight was on it, that amplifies it. So there's all these things that people don't really take into consideration. They say, "Oh, it's worked great for me for a month." And
but don't
reach back to me in 3 or 4 months. So I want to address 2 quick comments over here. Kushal said Tesla mobile connector is a great value for the money. Yes, it is, Kushal. It's a fantastic value for the money. As a matter of fact, I talked to Tesla recently and asked them, why don't you make a J1772 version of that so people don't have to use adapters all the time? If they did, it would kill it. But that's one of the things that Tesla isn't doing at the moment. They're already making a J1772 wall connector. Maybe at some point they'll do the mobile connector. And then Gary Clark said it survived the new body drop frozen test, which I just started doing with the portable chargers when they're frozen. I dropped them 5 times in addition to the connectors. And the Webasto the Go did fine. And one of the reasons why is, and goes back to it being built well. The plastic outer casing has a rubberized outer shell around all the corners. So, you can drop this thing as many times as you want. And I think it's going to do just fine. So it's just a well-made item, a well-made charger, which is why it's definitely one of my recommended units.
Right. And Maki Vlog points out, buy a 50,000 car and then a cheap charger makes no sense.
That's what I say all the time. You spend all this money on a car and for the charger and also for the installation. You hire. My friend does electric, so he's going to come over and hook it up for me. Oh, great! You saved a couple $100. I hope you're sleeping well at night with your family up there while this thing's pulling 11 kilowatts. With your friend that twisted one of the wires like once and put a little tape around it. But in any event, I'll continue to stand on my soapbox for buying good equipment and using good installers. That's important to me.
Right on. So, Tom, you also spent a few days in California for the CharIN Vehicle Interoperability Testing Symposium, or VOLTS for short, where you got to hang out with not only with a bunch of engineers from different charging equipment companies, but also Kyle. And so we're going to talk about that in detail shortly. But first, I wanted to mention some of the content that Kyle put out this week. So, Kyle, you dropped a bunch of videos this week as usual, but I think we've talked mostly about them already. I did want to just like mention them individually so people can know what they can find on the Out of Spec Reviews YouTube channel this week, because there's some good stuff there. So a couple of weeks ago, you told us about your amazing experience at the Peterson Museum in Los Angeles. So now you have a video up that basically shows people every electric vehicle that can be seen there now. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And if so, I was going to list a couple of them here. So, but if there's something that you want to specifically mention about them, just feel free to jump in. So moving on. Last week, you told us about driving the Bright Drop Zevo 600 delivery van. So for those who don't know, Bright Drop is a new General Motors brand that makes delivery vans using its Ultium platform. So these are sort of like Hummer EVs, kind of with a much different form factor, basically. And so you drove a long wheelbase version. There you are, for our YouTube audience in the Twitch audience. So these things are pretty awesome, and I think you really enjoyed driving it. So I guess check that out if you're weird like us and into electric delivery vans. And so speaking of weird, you also drove the Lightning E-Motors electric ambulance that's built on the bones of a Ford Transit 3500 van. So we also talked about this again last week. I guess there were sirens involved. I'm not really sure. But I think if you're into electric vans, this is also worth your time. Is it worth our time?
I don't know. Not this one. I mean, the video hasn't changed much since we last reviewed the Lightning E-Motors vehicle. So like it's been 2 years.
Right.
They've like refined everything a little bit, but it's not like earth shattering.
Sure.
But I don't know if there's another electric van video that went up today, just literally with this show.
Van life.
And it's a company called Maxwell Vans. We just popped over there, spent 3 hours with them, something like this. And they are doing conversions of Ram chassis, but they're putting literally Model 3 and Model Y drivetrains in these things. And it's not just Model 3 and Model Y drivetrains. They're fully integrating the Tesla components into the Ram stuff.
So this is a Tesla then. So for all intents and purposes, like charging and stuff.
Yes, this is a Tesla van. It is so cool. And everything works. And it charges at over 200 kilowatts because it's got a Model 3 battery pack or Model Y battery pack. Okay. It's got a Model 3 performance motor on the front axle, so it's fast. And it's really cool. And what's so interesting about this compared to some other things, but they're working with some van upfitters to do electric van life. Not only are you obviously getting a van with, I would say, the best battery and powertrain under $100,000, if you will, for a reasonable price. Their conversions are like 50 grand average, something like that. 40s starting. You can max them out closer to 60s, just depending on what you're doing. And
not including the donor vehicle, I suppose.
Not including the donor vehicle, but it's very reasonable, I think, considering all the work they have to do. And the house portion of the RV runs off the high voltage battery pack. So we've seen like Lightning E-Motors do that thing with Winnebago, and then we've also seen Winnebago do the thing with the Ford E-Transit, and they literally like just put their existing stuff in the back of an electric van. So they put their own batteries and everything, and it's two separate systems. This has a 1,400 watt solar panel on the roof that charges the high voltage battery. The air conditioner is literally the Model 3 compressor that they take out of the Tesla to cool the cabin, interior and exterior. Like it's fully as if Tesla would do it. And the real magic sauce is, of course, anyone can hack up a Tesla and drop a battery pack in there. But the software integration of everything, they have regen controls. It's really amazing. And what I think is kind of like, okay, so two different viewpoints on this. When you bring a van to them, you're getting obviously a second-hand battery. Tesla won't sell them new supply of battery and motors. But I would almost argue like a used 82 kilowatt hour Model 3 battery pack or Model Y battery pack is probably better than most of the new off the shelf, maybe not even automotive grade batteries that most of these van people are putting in for these small, low volume production stuff. And then, the other side of it is you have huge reliability, huge charging speeds, and, it just works. So I was really impressed. I love the idea. I asked them, when can they do a Sprinter? Because I really want to do a dual motor dual battery Sprinter. So that they're working on a extended range version where they're going to link 2 batteries together and and then go. It doesn't use the North American charging port and the Tesla port. And I'm pretty sure the reason is, these are mostly, I believe, crashed or totaled vehicles, or maybe cheap vehicles that were sold. But the drivetrain and the batteries are fine, and they test everything before they put them in the vans. It seems really cool. They're really smart guys. A lot of ex-Tesla guys, actually. And surprisingly not. And I'm pretty sure Tesla won't allow salvage vehicles to charge on the superchargers.
Right. I think it has to go through a certification process before that can happen, right?
Right, and there's no way
they a lot of money for it.
Yeah,
when you and they're saying, plug it in.
When you turn up to get this certified at a service center, they're going to be like, no, we're not even, no. So
not even roll up the garage door for that. Nope.
Nope, we're not coming out. We're not certifying that. So that is a shame. I guess if you do it without, and you just take a flyer, then there might be some legal ramifications. I mean, if you did it as an individual, that would be interesting. But if you're going to sell these as a commercial enterprise, make money out of it, I think there'd probably be some legal ramifications if you start.
I think they could make it supercharged. Like, these guys know exactly what they're doing. Like,
no doubt about it. And especially now that the Tesla connector is a North American charging standard, it makes you wonder, well, how much control will Tesla want over that connector? But I don't know if you're allowed to put that on a car and sell it. I mean, there was the whole Aptera thing, but
it was one of those things where when I was there, I even mentioned in the video, like, I got to ask these guys the reason. And like, it was conscious in my head, but then obviously it blew my mind when, just left my brain when it was time to ask them.
I love it.
But either way, the CCS charging worked really well. I mean, it's literally like driving a Model 3. The motor's really quiet. They did put a limited slip diff front wheel drive, so you don't get massive front wheel spin, which works pretty well. And that's an optional extra, but I think it's worth it. They literally take the motor apart and put the diff in, and they're working on a gear reduction package as well for heavy loads. They've sold almost 100 of them, and IKEA just ordered a bunch.
Really?
Which is very cool. So it's like a sustainability thing, because the thing is, most of the DIY solar guys are working on Model S and X battery packs, those modules and bricks. There's tons of components out there for them. The Model 3 and Y were kind of locked down a little bit more hardcore than S and X were from a software perspective. And honestly, just the packs, the bricks are bigger. They're harder to move around. You can't just pick them up. And so these guys really spent, years reverse engineering that package, and that's their unique selling point, I would say. And it works great. I was blown away. It has a mobile app. You can do anything you want.
Wow.
They actually found a large percentage of their buyers are actually going for the standard range without DC fast charging. They're just doing shuttle runs.
Okay.
And AC charging them. And so I find that pretty interesting. But van life, you want most range, most charging, and they're all in. They're like, we're going to fully integrate this. I guess they're working with a van builder in Colorado by us to do a fully really nice build from the ground up. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Can't wait till they do it on the Sprinter chassis, because I'll just bring mine on by and have that thing swapped.
That's crazy.
Oh, great suggestion for a video. Let them loan it to you and drive it to a Tesla service center and say, look, I just bought this. I need you to turn on the supercharging. It's an open standard, right? So, if it was CCS, you could just pull up to an Electrify America station and plug in.
And I did, and it worked.
Yeah. So, if it's an open standard, open this thing up for me. I want to use it. That would make a great video. I'm telling you,
Yeah, I don't know how much I want to piss off Tesla people this week, but yes.
Come on, you pissed off everybody else. Now you're worried about Tesla people?
I'm not worried about it. It's just like we already know we know the outcome of it before we already film it. But yes, it would be interesting to see.
All right. So this week you also put up your video of driving the Kia Niro EV, which you rented from Hertz when you were visiting LA. And so your review video is up about that now. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say about that.
Great car.
Okay. So, and finally, you're known for your videos about DC fast charging, but last week you put up this video about AC charging. And do you want to tell us a little bit what we expect if we watch this one? I saw the Autel home charger was featured, but what else was happening there?
Yeah, the video basically says if you really want to learn about AC charging, watch the State of Charge YouTube channel.
Right. I saw there's some Tom's shout outs there. Yeah.
It was a referral video for Tom to get more viewers, basically.
Well, I appreciate that as always.
Sure.
All right. So before we dive into this, what was it? The CharIN Volts Testival. I wanted to mention that I got to spend a couple of days in the very cool city of Savannah, Georgia. It's a great little town, and I was there to learn more about the Hyundai Motor Group Meta plant that's under construction there now, and also drive the Hyundai Ioniq 6. So, as many of you know, Hyundai uses the eGMP platform under the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6, as well as the Kia EV6 and Genesis GV60, and there's a number of new vehicles coming to that platform as well. So it's super efficient. It's got an 800-volt architecture, so it charges from 10 to 80% in 18 minutes under good conditions. So which is as good as it gets right now, basically. So they can't really build them fast enough, I think, and they're not even. Some of these aren't available in all the states. I mean, you're shaking your head. They're piling
up on lots.
Are they?
Yeah, because they lost the tax credit. They're at a huge competitive disadvantage because of it.
Okay, so this plant is going to help with that.
Yes.
Domesticate the supply of those vehicles. Right. So that's where this plant comes in. So it's not just a plant; it's like a whole complex. It kind of reminds me of the VinFast thing a little bit, where they have like all this. VinFast has in Haiphong, Vietnam, they have like a bunch of suppliers in their same. It's almost like a huge industrial park, but that's them. For Hyundai in Savannah, this is like 2,900 and I think 6 acres to start, and it's huge. Let me actually pull this up. I've got a little video I took when I was there. Share screen. Window. So there we are. Share. And then go. Yeah. And then bring back up this. All right. So yeah. Volume or whatever. So as you can see, it's just like this site. They've got a few, metal erection things being erected there now. I think they did all the pile driving already over the site. So you can drive like, I don't know. It takes like maybe like a minute or so to see the whole thing as you drive by the site, and it's quite deep. Let me close that up. All right. So yeah, so they're not only making the vehicles there, but also the batteries, which is in addition to the 35 gigawatt hour plant that they're constructing with SK on northwest of Atlanta. So Hyundai hasn't at least released official figures yet, but combined, I think those two operations are going to hit maybe 50 gigawatt hours at least to start. So the site, the site also has some affiliated companies, suppliers like Globus and Modus. So motors will be made there, and seats and other things. So it's supposed to put out 300,000 vehicles a year once it's up and running, and they're permitted to expand to 500,000. So it's a good start. The plant is supposed to go up pretty quick by traditional U.S. standards, and it's actually slightly ahead of schedule right now, they say. Production vehicles should start rolling out there in 2025, I believe early in the year, actually, too. So the build time is basically like 2 years from like breaking ground, piling things to actually production-ready cars rolling off the line, which is pretty decent by U.S. standards. And the whole project, I think, just underlines Hyundai's commitment to building electric vehicles in this country, so they'll be eligible for the federal tax credit and be competitive. And that's just a start. They didn't talk about it, but they'll also at some point convert the existing Hyundai and Kia plants in the U.S. to produce vehicles. So I also got to drive the Ioniq 6 on this trip, and we've talked about this car a little bit. Kyle, you've driven it, and I can't remember. Tom, did you drive the Ioniq 6 yet? Okay. But that's the electric sedan, and I was a little critical of the styling when it came out, but in person, it's pretty cohesive design. There's a lot of interesting things, like with on the front wheel well, it's got a little like a gap reducer, they call it, for aerodynamics, and then on the back, like quarter panel, is finished in black, so it kind of takes away some of the weight of the back end. It just kind of helps the design. It's kind of subtle things you don't really maybe notice. It doesn't register like looking at it. But anyway, in person, I thought it was pretty decent. So I didn't really get a chance to test the chassis dynamics as thoroughly as I wanted. I was sharing the car and the ladies I had with me, I don't think were automotive journalists so much. So I was kind of in chauffeur mode. But
to be kind, I think earlier before we went live, you said a couple of more ladies who were a little more senior who were invited on this, and but perhaps you weren't gonna drive it like you stole it. You were being respectful.
Was driving around a bunch of old ladies around Georgia, and that was his experience of the week. That's what we should have titled this. I drive old ladies around Georgia.
I feel back on because one was older, one was a bit younger. Actually,
you're so nice. They're not going to watch this. You can say whatever.
Yeah, don't worry. They're not
don't even know what.
But they were very nice.
Is, Dominic.
So you know what I would have done. You got to look at the opportunity, Dom. Yeah. Get your GoPro, put it in the window facing the back, and then just romp it and have them bouncing back and forth and everything. You'd get 1 million views in the first day. Yep. Screaming, arms waving and everything. You got to look for the opportunities, Dom.
Absolutely.
I think you have a point there. So this is the car here, and we drove to this like nice little spot. It's like a mile, I think, of these oak trees like arching over the roadway. It was kind of nice.
I got to mention this since I'm talking about that. So one of the things I did when I was younger, you guys know I have I had a CRX SI, and I put a nitrous oxide kit in it when I was like 18, 19. So I used to torture my parents, like we all probably did, but I think I'm a little bit more. So the CRX was a 2-seater. So I forget what I had to do, but this is how you guys are going to think so poorly of me, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't care. I forget what happened, but I had to take my mother somewhere, and I don't know. There was something in the front seat or something. She couldn't sit in the passenger seat, so I had to put her in the back. Now, if anybody knows a CRX SI, there was like a little storage space behind the rear seat. It was like a trunk without without seats. I don't know if you can get an interior picture, Martin, but so I have her back there, and I flip open the nitrous, and I just get on it, and I start sliding sideways and everything. And I'm looking in the rearview mirror. My mother's like rolling from one side of the car to the other side of the car. My mom's like 4'11". She's just like old, like not old, but she was probably like 50 at the time. And it was just, I was laughing so hard I almost crashed. Like, talk about totally not safe. But for some reason that popped in my head when I was thinking about Dominic, thrashing it around with the old ladies. But that's my mom's Mother's Day story. Yeah.
All right. So I just want to say a little bit more. Thanks, Don. I just want to say a little bit more about the car before we move on. But so overall, I thought it was pretty, nice, great driving. From what I could tell, the steering was a little bit light for my taste. The wheels a little bit bigger than the Model 3. But it was okay. The ride was great, even on 20-inch wheels, more compliant than the Tesla Model 3 on 19-inch wheels. The accelerator tip-in was a bit sensitive in like normal mode or in comfort mode. I thought in eco mode, which disconnects the front motor, it was like just perfect. Actually, it was kind of nice. Right. So, and I also spent a lot of time in the back seat. And I know some people have found the headroom tight back there, but I'm 6'2", and I was like just in a relaxed position. I hadn't really thought about it till we were going for a while. I'm like, oh, it's not bad actually. Until you sit up so far as you can, then I could maybe get my hair to brush the top. But I mean, just normally, I thought it was pretty fine. It's a little less room actually than the Tesla Model 3 or the Polestar 2, which they benchmark against. The native navigation was okay, but definitely could use some improvements. The seats were a bit firm for my taste. I think they got the materials feel right. Everywhere you touch feels decent on touch points. And yeah, so I'm hoping to get some time with it again because I really want to get into the software. I didn't get to dig through the menus too much. We were out on the road for quite a while. So yeah, I didn't really get the chance that I was hoping for. But anyway, so I don't know if anyone has any comments. Oh, John has a comment. John 209 says Ioniq 6's butt is ugly.
Yeah, but remember the prophecy concept it was based on? That right. How did it go from that to what we ended up with? Because that concept was
that is sweet.
Stunning.
I know
that's right. Lovely. But there we go.
But there were some people on the trip, and that really like the look of the car. Like even the back and everything. And I thought in person it is better than it does come across better than it does in pictures. Right. So as I already mentioned, Tom and Kyle, you guys are both at this Testival. So Tom, maybe you could start by telling us what this event was about, and then you and Kyle can tell us about some of the things you saw and learned there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool to hang out with Kyle, and it's always good when we get together. We were really I think we were like one of the only people there that were not actually working. There were very few. This isn't something that like journalists would go to because it's really technical. Not something that somebody could really write an article about. And so that was really cool that we got to just rub elbows with all the engineers. So what Testival is, and I don't even know if they really call it the Testival anymore. They used to, right, Kyle? But there was nothing that said Testival. It was all just Volts 2023. Testival. So, but it is a Testival, and that's a testing festival. So what they do is they do this a couple times a year around the world. It's sponsored by the CharIN organization, and the CharIN organization is kind of like there's the CHAdeMO organization that supports CHAdeMO charging. The CharIN is an organization that basically supports the proliferation of the CCS as a European and North American standard. And what this is these testivals are to test the equipment to make sure everything's compatible. And the interesting thing is, people, I get asked this question all the time. Everybody's like, well, why is there compatibility issues? There's a standard. Just follow the standard and it'll work. But one of the funniest things, not funniest, but one of the most interesting comments that I got out of like the initial introduction when they were on stage and they were making presentations is one of the engineers said, I have two questions. I have one question for you. Do you want us to follow the standard or do you want it to work? And how telling is that?
Right.
So, there's so many different ways that companies, even though there is a standard, every engineer, it seems like, interprets the standard slightly different, or at least you can make slightly different interpretations. And if the charging equipment company, the ABBs, the FSX, the BTC Powers, if they design their equipment with this definition of the standard, and then a car company defines it just slightly different, it could be off by something that you wouldn't even really realize at first. The two systems are not going to be compatible. It's going to throw a fault. It's not going to charge the car. So that's basically what they do at these events. Is they get all of the equipment manufacturers, the charging equipment manufacturers together with all of the car and truck and bus manufacturers that are going to be using all of this equipment. And it's like speed dating. Mercedes pulls up to the ABB booth. They run their tests. They go to the BTC Power booth. Then BMW comes over to the ABB booth, and then they move on. So it's all the cars are constantly moving around throughout the whole event. And the best part about it is after it's done, all the information is shared. You never see BMW engineers sharing something with Mercedes engineers, except that something like this, which is really cool. And another thing that was really cool at this event was they had the megawatt charging system, the MCS there. We weren't able to test it out or anything, but they had it there. And I'm going to be putting out a video soon. I got to interview a CharIN board member, Michael Keller, and talk to him about MCS. And one of the things that I found that was really the biggest thing that I found out of this was, and I know that there's been rumors back and forth about will Tesla use MCS. Tesla came out with their own megawatt charging connector. If you remember, it looked differently. So people were wondering, is Tesla going to use this? Is Tesla going to use, their own thing? And it seems pretty much, while he wouldn't come out and say, I guarantee it, he did say on camera, yes, it appears as though the whole industry, and when I say the whole industry, it's Tesla included, is coalesced around our connector, this MCS connector. Everybody is going to use it worldwide. Well, at least Europe, US, South Korea, not outside of China. China and Japan are probably going to have their own thing going on, but pretty much everyone else here. That's a picture of me holding one of the MCS connectors. It's huge, as you can imagine, but that's great to hear that it looks like there will be one connector to rule them all, at least for megawatt charging, and it goes up to 3.75 megawatt. That's, I think, 3,000 amps at 1,250 volts, or I think that's what it is. Yeah. So that was my take on it. Kyle was doing his own thing over there, which was pretty good. I'd like to hear about what his highlights were.
Yeah, well, I really treated it as an educational opportunity. So really lucky that get to make YouTube videos for work. So I knew a lot of the engineers that were there going into it, met a bunch more, which was really amazing. And for me, we do a lot of DC is our world. This is where I'm going heavy into. And I'm
not, by the way, but it's interesting.
Yeah. So it's the event was cool. So starting out, we had the first day of presentations that we sat through, and I thought there were some good, some bad. Ultimately, the whole point of CharIN is really to define ISO 15118. So there's three main charging communication standards when you plug in a car for DC charging. You have DIN 70121, ISO 15118-2, and then a future -20 version of ISO 15118. And the -20 is what MCS is going to run on. It's going to enable bidirectional power. It's going to enable more control, more information. And right now there are cases of MCS working, but they're pretty much running on 15118-2 as a placeholder until -20 comes up. And I'm going to make a whole bunch of videos nerding out on what the differences are. And what I wanted to get out of this event was to see what is actually being tested. So the conference was neat. There was some arguing going on, especially when it comes to PKI and certificate handling of plug and charge. And, the plug and charge, I would say, ecosystem is not maybe as complicated as it needs to be, or I should say the other way around. It's maybe more complicated than it needs to be, but it's also a lot of security layers and things like this. So when you initiate a charging session, essentially you go into a TLS layer, you get certificate transactions that are being moved around, and I'm going to do a whole video on this so I don't bore you now, but it's pretty crazy. And there's one company at the center of this called Hubject. So this was maybe a point of concern, or at least something to at least keep an eye on, that there's one company controlling all of the certificates. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. There's really not much space for a second company in, because the cars need to figure out a place and the chargers need to figure out a centralized place to check certificate holding. So Hubject's at the center of that. And so the whole first day was just these types of conversations. Day 2 and day 3, I spent yesterday and the day before there testing, which was really great. For me, was learning what is being tested. And it's certainly nothing to do with high charging power or, let's thermal derate this and things like that. It's all about getting the car and the charger to talk to each other to initiate a charging session, and then to ramp down the charging session without breaking things. So for example, I saw a lot of issues in general just with the pre-charging process of this. And there's a whole, initialization. Hello, there's a Slack test. Here's the language I want to speak. Here's how much power I can give you. Here's how much power I want. And then, you start to initialize the charging session. You got to throw voltage on your entire line, but the contactors haven't closed on the DC side of the car. I noticed quite a few, especially of testing units and some other things, failing during this pre-charge process. So a lot of work is being done during this step, because ultimately there is I would say, relatively low number of times, and I DC fast charge all the time, that I plug into a charging station and it doesn't at least initialize. Most of my issues happen after the charging station has begun, or with maybe plug and charge in early days. And so, the stuff that's being worked on here isn't really contributing to mass problems. And that's because of the work that's happening here. Prototype cars come, they talk to all the units, they go through, and they get sorted out that way. So for me, I really wanted to learn what are the messages that get transferred through. How can I get equipment so I can test it out in the field, which I'm working on now. So when I go and do charge testing, I'll actually have the whole log of the charging communication between the charger and the car, whether that's through a man in the middle test, which will have equipment to do that, or also through just package sniffing with, literally just picking up the radiation signals out of the cable, if you will, essentially. And so lots of cool stuff coming from my side that I've been wanting to get into, but there's no real way to learn this stuff without going and meeting people. I have to give a special shout out as well. I spent some time with the head of supercharging for Tesla, and she was great. We talked a lot about, what should they improve? What are they doing great? Really focused on making sure that the driver has the best possible experience, which I thought was awesome. Spoke a ton with the Rivian charging engineers as well. Tom did as well. And they are knowledgeable guys, really great, constantly pushing updates, making sure the trucks can charge well. Of course, the BMW guys, the Mercedes guys were all cool. Volvo had their new C40 there with the updated battery pack doing some stuff. But then what I think is almost more interesting is this medium and heavy duty application, because we started to see electric school buses. There was like 5 of those around. There was big trucks, and that is a whole world of Wild West, because you get so much less automotive grade components when you go for these big rigs, and so there's more noise, so the communication on the cable has to fight through more electromagnet radiation, if you will, that's pushing through. And those had some interesting issues, like random stuff that, like, obviously the automaker cars are fine at. So it was really cool to watch all of this unfold. It's early days for me learning all of it, but as I learn, I'll share with our viewers, because I think it's important that we fully understand the communication standards, what's happening when we plug in a charger. And honestly, we don't know when a charging session fails sometimes what's going on. So being able to actually collect the data on that and say, oh, yep, I had a sniffer on there and that's why that failed, it can point to maybe some root causes. So yeah, also from a metering perspective, making sure that you're getting the energy that you're actually paying for coming out of the unit is a real hot topic, because most of the meter technology in these DC units that I've found are pretty bad. And so we're going to have equipment to basically say, here's how much energy flowed through. How much did the unit bill us for? Which will be cool.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to know the truth behind that. Hey, can I ask both of you, actually? This is obviously a conference for super brain dorks. And I know that because while you've been talking, I've been searching Twitter for coverage and pictures of this event, and there aren't any. And that's because it wasn't attended by a bunch of people on social media saying, look at me. It was attended by engineers doing actual real work who aren't on Twitter. So it's surprisingly little coverage I could find of this. And as you were talking to these incredibly clever people, is there an understanding of the real life? Because my experience of talking to super brains is they get everything from an intellectual perspective, and they know that it works, and they know why it doesn't work. But they sometimes struggle a little bit when you go, yeah, but charging sucks. Like, I plug my car, it doesn't work. Charging is terrible. And they'll go, no, you misunderstood. Charging is fantastic, and it all works. And yeah, we have these little differences that we need to work out. But no, it's all very good. And you say, no, charging is generally rubbish apart from Tesla. Do they get the people that you were talking to? Was there an understanding of the real world problems that we all have, or are they so deep in it that they can't zoom out enough?
So would love, Tom, I want to hear what you say as well, but I'll share some just conversations I had, because you guys know me. I don't hold back. I'm like, Tesla's the best. How are you going to get there? That's the goal. My friend Jeremy at EVgo, which we're going to make some videos together coming during the first day, was up there literally saying, we need to match the Tesla experience. There's like, no one brought up Tesla very often through there, but Joe's up there screaming at everyone, which is like, this is what we have to do. We need stuff to work. We need the customer experience to be great. The CharIN guys were like, oh my God, can this dude like not talk about this? It was actually, no, it was really funny. It was really great. And his messaging was perfect. So there is the understanding. Everyone, cheered him at the end of his thing. That's the goal. Ultimately, yes, the engineers, I would say, do have a sense of charging needs to work as a whole. But Martin, to your point, this is really, the conference is all about just getting the charge set up and then ramping down the charge. Most of the issues that are out there, like when we're talking about charging, is garbage. That's like getting poor charging speeds, or the cables messed up and they're not maintained properly and the cables are too short. This is literally like, plug in a car, can you initiate the session? That's all 3 days were about. And so from their viewpoint, yeah, everyone is just as frustrated. I spoke a lot with the charging hardware manufacturers as well, saying like, how are you guys going to prove your reliability out in the field? I spoke a lot with Electrify America as well. Some of their engineers, really good people. And, they're like, look, you're not always wrong. You're really not wrong. They get it. They have a tough job, and, it's not going to change our coverage in any way. You'll still know when we roll up to a charger and it doesn't work. It's still frustrating, and it's still way worse than it has to be. But because of events like this, I at least believe to think that the industry common knowledge is getting closer. We're going to see potentially less, false start issues, and it's really needed. But what we also need is a conference about how to manage charging once it's around, how to choose the charging stations that you're buying. And so, we'll have a ton of coverage coming on. What is our testing procedure when we test DC fast chargers? Like Tom does all of his AC charging stuff to say, hey, don't buy this melting unit. I don't know what it is. Must melt. And, yeah. Like, I don't know with data to tell you that this DC charger is objectively worse than this DC charger. I get spec sheets. I get user experience out in the wild. So we're going to start reviewing them and testing them and developing this, because no one else is doing this type of third-party comparisons.
That sounds pretty cool.
So my thoughts on this pretty much echo Kyle's, and what I wanted to point out, as Kyle did, Mark, was that the Testival was specifically for compatibility, and programming. Most of the chargers that we see that have failures are hardware issues, blown fuses, cable failures. So yes, the engineers there are fully aware. First of all, most of them drive EVs, and so they're fully aware of the problems with current infrastructure. But this event was not to solve those problems. This is interoperability, compatibility. This was all that, the getting the handshakes correct. So unfortunately, this isn't going to go a long way to fix that. Now that we, as Kyle said, we also had the opportunity to have the hardware manufacturers there, some of them, so we could kind of prod them a little bit about, when are you going to, improve this? I witnessed a conversation. Kyle didn't bring it up, from when his video that complained that the new Electrify America chargers were not functioning when it got really cold. And, there was a representative from that company there, and he kind of put his head down. He was like, yeah, like, you hit us pretty hard there, but you were right, and we immediately, which Kyle didn't know, but he told them, he was like, we rolled a truck out there that day. Like the next night we were there trying to figure out what was going on.
They flew the engineers to that site the next day on Christmas break. To go figure out why the chargers weren't working.
Yeah, and they did figure it out. They knew it, and it was actually ended up being a slightly different issue than what you had speculated, right? I was kind of listening.
Yeah, I don't know 100% what it is, but it sounded like it was a very small temperature sensor or something sent a weird signal when it got that cold. And like something that even they agreed, we should have picked this up and tested.
Extremely minor, you know what I mean? But that's the issue with this. If it's something that's just this small, it doesn't work, but so that was my take on it, Martin. It was that's what the whole, we didn't solve we really didn't solve a whole lot of the reliability issues for current infrastructure out there. Unfortunately, that's a whole nother bucket to deal with. But it was great great to see so many people getting together to try to get things moving in the right direction. And, there were 27 different manufacturers of vehicles there, and they did 182 testing sessions. So, and all that's going to get pooled together. Everybody gets that data just to make things work together better. And somebody commented before when Kyle was talking about all the things he learned there, Alahum commented, I can't wait for that video. Well, you're going to be waiting a while because unfortunately, I don't know if Kyle recorded any videos. I don't think you did when you were there. I did a few interviews, but this whole testing symposium was off limits for cameras and video and everything. We weren't allowed to take pictures, videos of any of the vehicles there. We weren't even allowed to take like pictures of the area. So I had to get permission to interview people and like put them up against a backdrop where we could have been anywhere, and do an interview. So there's not going to be a lot of content out of this. Like Kyle, I took this more as a learning experience, and that's why I go to these things every year. This was Kyle's first one. I've been going to them, and I find them fascinating, and I learn a lot every time I go. And you also, as Kyle mentioned, it's networking. We meet the engineers, we talk to the engineers, we learn things that we maybe had an assumption that this didn't work because of this. And then they tell us, we're like, oh yeah. And they're like, yeah, I read what you wrote and I wanted to respond, but we're not supposed to really reach out to people in that regard. But if you're asking me a direct question here, I can answer you. So it's the place to be if you're charging geeks like Kyle and I. And that's why you didn't see anybody else posting or saying anything on it online, because really no one was there. And the few people that were there were very limited on what we can post about it.
Right. And to be honest, like to Tom's point, there is like a abnormal amount of viewers among these engineers. Everyone knew what Tom and I were up to. They know the specific videos, especially the ones that we make about their companies. And so what was really great, and I thought actually the whole conference was really great. We didn't really harp on charging sucks, everything's bad, because like everyone knows. It was like, we all understand this is shit. How do we make it better? And so that was really great to just kind of bypass the basic low level introduction of the problem and just get to problem solving. And for me, it's how do we review this? How do we share this story? Because this is essentially, to me, the most important part of transportation going forwards. So how do we get in the nitty gritty? How do I learn the ones and zeros going back and forth? So when things do go wrong, now that we spend time with these engineers, we get to know them over the years. Like I obviously know a few people in the industry before this. Now I know even more. I can just say, hey, I'm going to produce a video. That's not going to change. But here's my data log from that session, and like bypass all the media PR stuff that like would never get filtered down to the person I need to talk to. So really good stuff.
I think that's
Kyle's 100%
key
right.
as well.
All these people knew. Oh, sorry, Martin.
Yeah, I think that's key, because you two are able to get access to people who know the stuff that we want to know. And so often there's a layer of media management that we have to go through, where I think that's where some of the fingers in ears, everything's fine, don't worry about it, comes from, because that's their job to try and move these problems away from the public eye. That's literally their job, is to manage the media. And you get good and bad examples of that. But if you've got access to the source, and even if you can't say, hey, here's who I spoke to, but if it adds to your knowledge, that's what I'm so grateful that you guys have access to this.
And what's great about it is, as Kyle mentioned, like they know us. And I think that these engineers, even if we never met them in person, they're more likely to be honest and talk to someone like Kyle and me, because they know we're out there on the front lines trying to explain this to people. We're not just like a regular journalist that once in a while writes an article about electric vehicles. Like, we make videos on this. We spend so much time and energy trying to help people figure out charging, that the engineers, when they see us, they're like, oh, there's out of spec. There's some. Kyle, I have to ask you, how many people asked to take a picture with you?
Oh, yeah. At least 50, I think.
Really? Oh, God. You're more well known than I did. I think I had 8.
Yeah.
Eight people asked to take selfies with me there. They're like, state of charge, come over. We watch all your stuff. So it was cool that everybody there knew who we were, booth to booth. they're like, yeah, you did a video on us, So and I think, like I said, that helps them open up to us more, because they know we're really fully vested in this. We're not just some reporter that wants to do a hit piece. We're going to write negative stuff, but we're going to write positive stuff. And we kind of know what they're talking about. They don't have to start at ground zero to teach us, volts and amps before they even get into, complicated handshakes. So this is a place for us to be. And it was a good trip, and it was good to hang out with Kyle for a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're going to try and sponsor it, the next event from Out of Spec. I think it'd be cool to have like the EV drivers sponsoring the event to make charging more seamless for EV drivers.
So I almost sponsored this one. It's not expensive, the sponsorships. No. But you know what I did? I said, so I'm not going to sponsor it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to look when we go, Kyle, to see how do they market the sponsorships. Like if they had big posters or who sponsored all of it.
Not really.
There was nothing. So I came out of it saying, I'm not getting anything if I sponsor this. If almost nobody there knew who the sponsors were. So if you're CharIN, if you give us a little bit more visibility on sponsorship, maybe you'll have Kyle and I sponsor the next one.
Yeah. I'm not sure I need the visibility side. I think it'd be good for messaging. It'd be cool just to say
right.
And whatever. I mean, there was a couple more points about CharIN that I thought were pretty cool, but we can kind of move on. I'm going to put them all in a video. So we'll all get to that. But ultimately, the good news is communication channels are open, learning has increased, and things are good here. A couple key takeaways, maybe just to leave on. I don't know if you were there, Tom. I think you may have been on a tour of the port, but Lucid demonstrated ISO 15118 plug-in charge with AC charging. I don't know if you had seen that. It was with the IoTeca chip in their charging unit, and that I was actually talking to some of the folks from Tesla, which that was another takeaway. The Tesla people there are focused. They are watching every single little thing of the industry. They're timing things. They're confident. They know what they're doing. They're so smart. They're honestly very personable. They watch our stuff, which is great, so they know what we experience. And for example, I was talking to someone from the supercharging team. Lucid's about to demonstrate this AC plug-in charge situation where she's like, oh, let's go run over there. She gets her timer out. She's like, don't plug it in yet. She stopped the whole thing. She wants to know the time it takes from initial plug-in to when it actually starts charging. And it was really cool to see how involved they were and actually how excited they were when things were going well. The whole Tesla team was cheering on Lucid. It's really a very collaborative event on the back end. So I'd love to see all of that.
That sounds really great. Yeah.
And by the way, it was only 23 seconds from plug-in to charging with plug-in charge on AC. Really not bad. Tesla's 6 seconds, but it's not bad.
I was there for that. I left right after that to go on that tour. And one thing, if you remember what they said, that because they were asked that question, how long does it take? And they said, we've recorded it be as quick as 8 seconds. And it's different each time, I guess, with the transfer of certificates. That's what holds it up. But it seemed pretty quick, and that's great to move in that direction.
Interesting. All right. I guess let's talk about some news then. All right. So I think the big and long-awaited product news this week was the first deliveries of the Fisker Ocean. So the very first one was delivered to a customer in Copenhagen, Denmark. So for those unfamiliar, the car is being built by Magna in Austria, and it claims to have more range than anything else in its class, up to 440 miles on the WLTP cycle on 20-inch wheels, and just a little bit less, I think 4 miles less, 436 miles on the 22-inch wheels, which is pretty awesome. So they say that they have orders for 65,000 of them. So that should keep them busy for a while. It was just reported that it now expects to produce between 32 and 36,000 of them a year. That's down from an earlier estimate of 42,000. So, right. So, of course, Fisker wouldn't be Fisker as well, too, without some controversy. So, and Bloomberg published a story claiming that the software in the car is prone to glitches, and that the speed of the vehicle is limited, and that even this first they printed. And actually, they took it back. Actually, they printed that this first delivered vehicle had been sent back to Magna's plant in Austria. So for its part, Fisker categorically denies that this is the case, and that the actual owner has come out and said there's no problem with the car and it's more than lived up to its expectations. He claims it's faster than his Porsche Cayenne Coupe. I'm not sure what the numbers are, but yeah. So at least Fisker's like starting the ball. I think we've been waiting for a while, and there's still a lot to learn about these cars, because we haven't really. I mean, Kyle, you drove them a little bit, and I think you said the software was a bit glitchy when you drove it or something.
It was too early to tell. I mean, at the end of the day, software is hard. And yeah, I was about to bring that up. I saw the headlines of the cars, having to go back or whatever it is. I don't know. I mean, obviously we know some people over at Magna. We're actually about to start on some projects with them coming up, but ultimately, they can't deliver a car that has bad software. So how true was that? Was that really the case?
I mean, we're going to find out pretty soon, because they're building the cars and they can't just hold on to them. They have to put them in people's hands. So,
I worry about Fisker, again, always have, and still do now. And, the thing that I'm struggling to see is maybe a year ago, we would get a lot of requests. When are you going to do something Fisker related? And then it seems like the excitement, like it's taken so long to get to production, delay, whatever it is, that maybe the excitement has petered out a little bit. I was here in LA, and I was had to go to the Apple store for something, and I noticed there was going to be a big Fisker store going in. So they had a big banner there, but then I put that on Twitter, and someone said it's been like that for a long time. So, not sure what's going on. I'm still cautiously optimistic, but I'm not finding the unique, to be totally transparent, I'm not finding the unique selling point of this that would make me go, yeah, let's go Fisker Ocean over Model Y.
So I was with Fisker last Friday. I wasn't allowed to drive the vehicle, but what was interesting is the people that they had put, no, not last Friday, last Sunday, because again, old man, crown, big chair event. So yeah, Sunday was Fisker, and I haven't driven it as Kyle has, but what I thought was interesting is the people they put with the vehicle were. I'll say were young, very good-looking guys. Could have been in a boy band otherwise. And that's not to say that you can't be very technically competent if you are either young or good-looking or any of the above. But if I say typical promo person, that they might have had lots of knowledge of the vehicle, but they didn't share it. So I wanted to know things like how many right-hand drive versions are coming in this wave. This was a left-hand drive version, and how many people have reserved in the UK, and what's the rollout going to be? And it was more a case of, hey, look at the infotainment screen. Doesn't it look really cool? And you're like, okay, so that's not the conversation they wanted to have. They didn't want to have that. And so either they couldn't answer my questions or didn't want to. Very, very pleasant, very nice, very charming. Everyone from Fisker was fantastic, but didn't have the information that I wanted to know about the vehicle. I guess what they were wanted to, what they're briefed on is, well, here's the 0 to 60 time, here's the, WLTP range, and here's the size of the wheels, all that kind of stuff. Like, well, I can read that on a spec sheet. So let's talk about, but I don't know when the first UK deliveries are going to be, but they were here in the UK, and it was, I want to know what size market we are. We're right-hand drive. We're not a big deal. Right. If Fisker said we're going to make, the Model S and the Model X haven't been on sale here for the last 3 years.
And they're not going to be, actually. We just learned yesterday, I believe. They're not going to make a right-hand drive Tesla Model S or X.
So, it's a shame, but we know that we're not going to get those vehicles. But
that's my impression of Fisker every time I talk to anyone at the company, Martin. I went to at CES, they had, Heinrich was there, some of their engineers were there, and no one had a cohesive answer as to how the car was put together. Now, ultimately, it was for investors to give them a thing to drive, and I just kind of snuck in there and said, hey, I'm going to drive the car. I'm bringing my iPhone with me. Thanks so much. And definitely way bypassed the first drives of the journalists. I don't know if they were happy about it or not, but I got the drive in, so okay. Whatever it takes, I guess. I don't even know the battery pack capacity, usable and gross, on this car. Does anyone?
Well, that's my next little part of the segment.
113, but we don't know if that's usable or gross.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just learned this week about the size of the large Fisker Ocean battery pack and charging times and a few other specs, because they've, like you were saying, they haven't been super transparent. Usually we know all this stuff like long before for deliveries happen. But so the charging speed is the pack. It's the big pack. We know it's from CATL. It's a nickel manganese cobalt NMC chemistry, and it's apparently 113 kilowatt hours, which is big. But we don't know if that's gross or usable. Charging speed is now, they gave it as 33 minutes and 6 seconds. What?
What is that in kilowatts?
So that doesn't mean anything.
Right. We don't know if that's to 80%. I imagine it's to 80%, but we don't know if it starts at 10% or 20% to 80, and like 6 seconds. Like, it kind of tells me, it doesn't give me confidence.
It doesn't even say the percentage range. It just says charging time.
Is that
like I can plug in a car for 33 minutes and 6 seconds as well.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
If that was 100%, they'd have made the best EV in the world. Like 0 to 100. Well done.
Yeah. And they haven't announced if it's an 800 volt or 400 volt pack. Now we assume it's an 800 volt architecture.
Really?
Because they said that it's going to exceed 250 kilowatt.
Right.
The peak charging speed, and nobody's done that except for Tesla on a 400 volt pack. So I'm guessing it's an 800 volt pack, but they've never given us any clue what it is.
Yeah, but Volvo EX90 is 250 kilowatts and is a 400 volt pack, because now CCS is opening up the amount of current you can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all we heard was greater than 250 kilowatts. So, it could be a 400 volt pack, but we'll see. I still think I'm leaning towards guessing it's an 800 volt, but
because it's built on an existing platform of a vehicle that's 400 volts.
Okay.
But I don't know. And everyone would think because we do stuff with magnet. Genuinely, like, that is a hard wall that we don't cross.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the curb weight we learned as well, which is kind of interesting. It's 5,365 pounds. I assume that's the big battery, because that's 965 pounds more than a Tesla Model Y, which is pretty close in size, dimensions to that car. The Fisker obviously has a lot more battery in it, but Kyle, carrying that much weight has got to affect the vehicle dynamics, right? You only had a little bit of time behind the wheel, but did you notice like that kind of heft, or maybe you drove a smaller battery version?
I don't know what I drove, because they wouldn't tell me, but I at least knew it was all-wheel drive, and it was like 90% front-wheel drive with like rear push assist. And I was just like, make it the other way around. Give it the big juicy power on the rear if you're going to pitch this as a sporty SUV. What I'm interested in is, where's the $30,000, $40,000 one, whatever the cheap one is.
Right.
What was the number? Was it 35 is what they promised? I know it was very reasonable. And I thought it was a 70 something kilowatt hour.
I think originally it was like 35-ish, but they're changing some of we're getting to the part now of their story where, things are going to be delayed in the future. Some prices are going up for future product, but this product I'm still not sure about.
That's all to be expected at the launch. They just need to get a car out there, show that it can work, show that it's built well, show that they have a good sales and service experience, and the rest will come. Rivian proved it, right? Once you bring a car to market, that's actually that's when work really starts,
right?
Because the company won't be based on once they bring to market everything that happened before that. They're going to be based on everything that happens from that day forwards, which is, you got to be ready to live up to the US market expectations, which I believe are tougher than Europe. This is a hard market to succeed in. People in America want good quality service. They want good quality cars, and they'll be vocal when they're not. So let's hope they can live up to our market.
Right. Yeah. So just one example of those pushback problems issues. So the Fisker Pear EV, that's like the next one, is now delayed until 2025. And it's going to, I think the price has been adjusted. They're now saying that it will start from less than $30,000. So $29,900 or whatever, probably. And that's future product. So that's still out there.
This car up. What's the point?
We just don't need,
especially when you're delivering the first vehicle. The spotlight should really be on this first Ocean, but I think do you have any plans to get a hold of one yet?
Nope.
Okay.
I have a friend with one on order. Again, UK right-hand drive, but like the day he gets his delivered, I'll be down there.
Awesome.
He's a big EV fan,
Good.
and I can drive a customer car, as it were, and he had his order in pretty early. Why do they even raise the pair? Why talk about this? Why? I don't.
Well,
and
I
also,
think part of it was part of their because it was part of the financial
the financials.
reporting thing.
Yeah, now that they're public, they've got to like. I just, you know what? If I know people get in a real tizzy about Tesla and $25,000 vehicle and this pair and all that kind of stuff, and I really don't see it's the job of a startup. Argue whether Tesla's a startup anymore or not, probably not.
No.
I don't see it's their job. It's not their job. And I know people get very upset when they say, oh, it's another $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 vehicle. And I'm not buying those vehicles day in, day out. So I can't afford them. But I don't think it's the job of Fisker to be busting the bottom of the market, making great vehicles for no money. That should be VW's job. Volkswagen should be making the ID2 for 20,000 euros and making an absolute ton of them, because that's what these big established car makers are really, really good at doing. And you can't start there, but you can certainly start where they are and then drive down the prices. But we've seen this from startups often, maybe not the case in Fisker, I don't know. Often, a lot of companies talk a good game, because when we were going through IPO frenzy and SPAC frenzy and there was just billions of dollars flying around, a lot of it was to sort of juice the goose a bit and to make it seem like you've got more than just a couple of renders. But I just don't see Fisker. Just don't worry. Just don't worry about the pair. Just make the Ocean and do it really, really, really well, and we'll all love you for it so much.
Well, tell us what's going on with Nathan Green nailed it, Martin. It's in his last comment, the whole reason is to drive investment. I don't think they're putting a tremendous amount of time and effort in it now. I think it's to drive investment, to show people that, look, we have a future. We're not a one-trick pony. We have other vehicles down the pike. We're going to drive down the cost. That's my take on it. Is just to give consumer confidence and investor confidence that we're a multifaceted company. We've got this one vehicle that we're launching now. We're already working on the next one. We're here to stay. I think that's really the main point of it.
Right. So let's move on anyway, because we don't know anything until. But it sounds like, Martin, we're all looking forward to an awesome video from you about driving the Fisker Ocean. Super geeky details on your channel. Yeah, looking for some good video content from you soon.
I know.
No pressure. So let's see. We also want to talk about this about Tesla's has broken ground on the first lithium refining plant in the U.S. This is a huge deal, actually. Because right now, all the lithium in the world, be it hard rock mined in Australia or from the salt flats in Chile or wherever, it gets sent to China to get processed and to be purified so it works in automotive battery packs. And so with this new IRA or different legislation coming in the U.S., the mineral content of future electric vehicles sold in the U.S. to be eligible for the $7,500 rebates is going to have to be mined and processed in the U.S. So this is like bringing this part of the supply chain home, which it needs to be. It just makes sense. The world politics being what they are, and potential for things to go sideways. That who knows, whatever happens, you need to have a domestic supply chain. So this is like a super important deal. It wasn't a whole lot. It wasn't a big splash event because they're just breaking ground. Basically, they did have the Cybertruck with a fancy thing on the back, accessory, sort of to hold the tools. That looked kind of cool, little Mad Max thing going on. But so the lithium for this plant is going to be enough for about 1 million vehicles a year to start, and with the possibility of expanding. It can use feedstocks from different types of lithium, including recycled materials, but lithium from clay. There's all lithium is not like one thing. There's a whole lot of like lithium salts and lithium. Actually, I don't have all the terminology laid out in front of me here, so I don't want to misspeak. But it's not all the same thing. So, but this plant should have the ability to accept all of that stuff and output very pure lithium that they need to make good battery packs. And so, yeah, it's like the first one, and that's 1 million vehicles. That's good, but we're obviously going to need a lot more than that in the future. So look forward to other ventures, hopefully auto. I don't know. I don't know if it's really the auto manufacturer's place to do this, but if no one else is doing it, they need to sell those cars.
They'll be at a disadvantage if they don't.
Right. I mean, it's
we're starting to see this. I would say growing up. I'm obviously the younger one here, but growing up, it was all about globalization. It was how do we, get everything around. And now, just at a high level, I was thinking about it this week. And I'm not a great economy person at all, but it seems like everything's trying to come in and get as close as possible and self-reliance. And I watched that presentation in Texas. Sounds like they're going to become their own country is what they want to do. So it's, it just, but definitely like Tesla bringing the lithium plant as close to where they're producing the cars as possible, being able to pull ships right into the port in that town and they're right on rail. It made a lot of sense. I think it's going to be huge for that local economy. I, of course, going to drive by it at some point, going to be interested to see what's going on there. And lots of cool stuff going on.
Just to address one of the comments here, Buddy says any car company can build a factory without any attention, and yet if Tesla opens a factory, it's a super big deal.
Yeah, but
So firstly, there is an element of truth to that if Tesla do something in EV world, it gets a disproportionate amount of attention. I agree with you on that. But also, this is important, Buddy, because when Tesla opened their Vegas gigafactory and they started producing batteries there, this is years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, and trucks are turning up full of raw materials. No one else was doing that, and it went unnoticed because at the time they were too busy probably promoting I don't know what 8 years ago was battery swapping on the Model S or something, or the Model 3 was coming. But the reason this is a really big deal because Tesla have a huge amount of experience, more than anybody in the EV industry, at taking raw materials and processing them into finished batteries. And we were saying on this podcast 3 years ago, I've been saying on my podcast 5 years ago, if you're a car company, you got two ways of doing it. You either understand how to do this with raw materials and you get very vertically integrated, or you go to the market. And the entire automotive industry over the last 100 years have got really, really, really good. And there's whole tier 1, tier 2 companies that are out there, the likes of Bosch at the top of the tree, that solely exist in order to supply automotive companies, because they're really good at buying stuff from their suppliers just in time it arrives at the factory. I mean, to the minute. They don't want stuff sitting around, and it gets made into a car, and you go and buy it and drive it. And that was their expertise. And so years ago, all four of us on this podcast were saying, if you want to make EVs, unless you want to go right back to the mine and maybe even become a mining company, but certainly go back to the mine and have an understanding and a trace of where those materials have been, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So, Buddy, that's why this is a big deal, because it's once again Tesla doing what we've been saying. And it's not like we're four super geniuses, we're four idiots doing this every week, but we've been saying it for a really long time. And now what's interesting is when a CEO of a car company says something, often it's because they're either trying to influence policy or governments or whatever, because CEOs, that's what their job is to do when they get up and speak. But you see them stand up and go, hey, I think we might need to get into going, a little bit further back down the supply chain and get into batteries, You're like, you think so? I think you might need to, because there isn't the battery market to simply go out there to the shop, to the supermarket and say, hey, I'd like, can I have 100,000 of those and 200,000 of those, please? It doesn't work like that. So the fact that they're going into refining as a car company, this is uncharted territory. And that's my long answer of saying, Buddy, this is a really big deal.
Yeah. Right. Let me follow up on that. And it is a really big deal, Buddy. And, as Martin said, and Kyle said, I believe, we're building factories now to put, make batteries all over the country. But nobody is processing lithium. Nobody is building a factory just to process the lithium. Now Tesla is. all of the lithium in the world that gets mined from all over the place has to get shipped to China to get processed. If China decided they're not going to export any processed lithium, the entire world market of electric vehicles shuts down. So
Right.
the fact that we're now beginning to, we will be beginning to process lithium here in the U.S. We can get the lithium from plenty of sources, from here in the U.S., even from South America, from all over the world. We don't need to get it from China.
That's right.
And we'll be able to, Tesla will be able to make their batteries entirely here, from the sourcing the materials to processing the lithium to assembling the batteries. And if you remember, I recently interviewed Ford CEO Jim Farley, and I asked him about this, and he was quick to, like, he just kind of shook his head and he goes, yeah, he goes, we got to get into this. And he said, and I give Tesla props because they're building a plant now to process lithium. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we have to do that. And so this is a huge deal. It's a huge first step. Just as 10 years ago, the auto manufacturers might have been saying, oh, yeah, the batteries are a commodity. We'll source them when we need them. And then a few years later, they're saying, geez, we need to have control of our batteries. So let's build battery plants. The mm-hmm. next step is we're going to need to control the processing of the lithium for our battery plants. Let's build processing plants. And Tesla's the first one to do it. This is hugely important. It's a great step. My guess is that by the end of this decade, every manufacturer is going to have some sort of lithium processing that they control. I don't know where, but they will have that.
Right. And it's so the industry is really at this early stages, really. Vertical integration makes a lot of sense. It may not make sense in 30 years. You know, I have a feeling it's going to go back to, you know, different tier suppliers over time. But for now, for getting things started and getting things going, you have to be in control of your destiny, really. If you want to, you can't be dependent on, you know, a country that is, you know, we have sometimes challenging relationships with. And right, so you don't know what could happen. So
I did a very great way of putting it, Dominic.
I did a present. I was on a panel of 4 people at the Fully Charged live show.
How was that, by the way? We didn't really talk about it much.
Yeah, no, it's great. There's 2 of them this year, one in the south and one in the north, and we live in a very small island, but it's great that there's enough people to go along to 2 events. And
it looks huge. I'm like, I see all the posts, like people are pumped up, mm-hmm. they're going, mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Yeah, and there's going to be 3. There's going to be 3 next year. The one in London, I think, is going to be called Everything Electric or something. It's kind of like the more lifestyle side of heat pumps and solar and stuff. Yeah, it was good. And so what my panel was, I forget the title of it. It was something like, is China EVs about to take over? And of course, the first 25 minutes was yes, for all of these reasons. And the last 5 minutes, I raised exactly what we're talking about, which mm-hmm. is Biden could have changed everything. And my answer 6 months ago would have been, yes, there's going to be a Chinese EV on every street corner. They're just going to dominate. Now, there's obviously the import duties to the US, which complicates things. But in Europe, anywhere that we haven't got to pay those tariffs, yes, they're going to be absolutely everywhere. The names NIO and BYD and XPeng are going to be enormously common because they're coming and they're really good and they're much cheaper. And then what the Inflation Reduction Act did, and if that is all continued under the next administration, whoever wins your election next year, then that protectionism is not going to be ignored by the European Union. So the EU will either say, sure, but if you want to import cars from America, there's going to be a massive tariff. That's going to be very unpopular. You could argue that the leasing loophole with the IRA was argued by Europe, and that was kind of maybe one of their wins. I don't know. And so maybe Europe is going to do exactly the same thing. Will effectively retaliate. China certainly don't like it when Ford and CATL announced their partnership. China was like, hang on a minute, our IP leaving our shores to make it under license in America. That's not the way this works. China didn't like it being done to them. And so, and then the US didn't like it at all because they're like, hey, Chinese. And so we are very much in danger of American-made cars being sold in America, EU-made cars being sold over here. Chinese cars will stay in China. And that's not good for consumer pricing and for mm-hmm. innovation. Becoming a smaller planet is not good. This is not an economics podcast. But I think there are pros and cons to globalization, but that is very much a really big risk. So if Tesla don't do this now on a 5 or 10 year plan, if their plan is to use lithium in their batteries, yes, the comments are saying there are other technologies. Sure, there's some really interesting things, sodium ion batteries and all sorts of things coming through, but I don't think there won't be one dominant battery technology like everyone's been using NMC technologies, up until now, until sort of LFP came to the fore in the last couple of years. So I would have said 6 months ago it's a dead cert that the Chinese cars are coming, but the way this is going, the EU are now talking about, well, hey, look, maybe we need some rules as well, like our version of the Inflation Reduction Act. And maybe because when you've got big companies, I will say Northvolt, and I will then apologize on next week's show if their lawyers call me, but I think there's like some really big companies that had all that EU investment or European investment that are going, well, maybe we're going to move our factories to North America. And the lawmakers over here just won't. And again, that could be some showboating, or that could be just getting a better deal. But if we see a lot of investment drying up here and all moving to you guys,
right,
then
the EU needs to do something. Right.
So yeah, there's a potential that everybody needs to be doing their own refining. So yeah, this is a big story.
Right. Just Martin, Greg says you're awesome at summarizing this, and I have to agree. So,
well, I think about it, Greg, a lot in my head, and I know that if I tried to talk to my wife about it, she would tell me to shut up. So I come here every Friday in this little tree house that we have. I come into the tree house because I know that we're all amongst friends.
Yeah, I was going to say, Martin, you really need like a podcast or something to talk about these topics.
Right? That's what I need.
You should start that sometime.
I should do that.
Maybe like a written thing. Start talking about this.
There should be a newsletter that goes with it as well. That'd be cool.
Hey, great idea. Hey, before we go, I just want. Hey, before we go, I don't know, Martin, can you pull up that thing? Do you have the show notes?
Wait, we're going. We got more stuff to talk about.
Do we? What do we want
to talk about? Tesla's referral program is back. Big news. I think enhances the buying experience. Gamifies it a little bit, encourages people to pull it. Obviously, they're feeling some sort of demand, maybe not a crisis, but there's some lack of demand there. So they're pulling down the leaders, and they got they have their own new. I would say is you used to be able to refer yourself if you bought a Tesla, but now they have like a double the points if you do a loyalty reward. You get quite a bit, thousands of miles of supercharging. You can redeem these points. I think the value was like $160 for a Model 3 equivalent, or $260, something like this, for Model S or X. And you can redeem them. I need
to sell some friends a car so I can.
I still haven't totally come to terms with what we're gonna do if we ever share around a referral code or not. I mean, ultimately, I don't know. I got to really think about how this comes off as when we start reviewing Tesla stuff more, which, I'm an owner. I review Tesla stuff all the time. I don't want it to come off that it influences our reviews at all. So I'm not sure if we'll ever share around our code. I don't know.
Right.
But
for a while, there was like that's referral program. And we have, journalists, getting free roadsters, or at least a promise of a free roadster, and tons of things because of, they have huge audiences, and that using that to leverage, it's a bit of a line there,
So now you can obviously you can redeem them for accessory points. I think actually really nice things is if you sell enough Teslas to friends, you can redeem them for FSD software or enhanced autopilot. I think that's really good. The supercharging one, of course, is really nice. And I think remove the journalist side of things. This is fun. I've always liked the referral program. I thought it was really cool. And if anything, if Tesla's really trying to spur demand, Tesla owners in general are pretty cheap. They're always on the hunt for free things. Like they will way overvalue the actual monetary feedback of this. But some people like Maki Vlogs commenting here, it says it feels fake when YouTubers are getting referral points for specific cars that they're reviewing. I totally understand that viewpoint as well. And then you have other people who I would say are even more critical of Tesla than Patrick and Liv, which I would say have a very realistic approach, who are saying this is cool, go for it. So we haven't decided what we're going to do yet. Probably not share it would be the way I'm leaning. But when friends of mine buy a car, no question, I'm giving them my referral code because that's the point.
Right. Okay. So when I go to the Tesla app and go to that loot box and refer, it gives me like a list of just my contacts, and so I could refer just those people. So it's not like I have a code that I'm being shared publicly that people I don't know are using to give me stuff. I think that's not. I think that's a line that I don't want to cross. But
and you can't cross it. We're not on Inside EVs. Does not allow any of its contributors to share referral codes. Right. That's always been the policy at Inside.
Good thing I don't contribute. So have fun with that.
Right.
If anything, I take away from Inside EVs. They see Kyle Connor's name on the podcast. And get this guy out of here.
So, but I don't honestly, to be honest with you, I think it's cool that they do that. But I don't see it driving sales. I don't think anyone's buying a car because they got a referral code from their friend. Really? I see this, helping the people that have the referral codes getting free supercharging wells. But when I had my Tesla, I also shared my referral code, not publicly, just to friends. And I think I had like 10 referrals. But every one of those people were already buying a Tesla. I didn't convince them to buy a Tesla. They were just like, "Hey, I'm going to order a Tesla. Give me your code so you can get free miles." Like, I don't think that's like we talked about it helping drive, demand.
Right.
I don't think it's driving demand. Nobody's buying a Tesla that wouldn't have because they're getting someone's referral code. Am I missing something with that?
Yeah, I feel the exact opposite. I feel like owners are going to be more evangelistic. They're going to be talking about it more, get friends who are not even thinking about a Tesla into the topic. And I've seen it firsthand where people have, just by talking about their cars, convinced someone else to buy that particular car over something else, or to get them in the car market when they weren't any as all. So, yeah,
okay, I guess that happens. I just can't imagine buying a car because somebody sold me it. Like I don't know, maybe I'm wired differently.
Normal. So like same me too, right? Someone that very rarely are they going to come to me and say, "Hey Kyle, I know you didn't like that car, but you should consider it."
Yeah, but I'm going to get 1,000 free supercharging miles. You really need to get it.
But I don't think they brand it that way. I think it's an incentive to keep it front of mind. People are on the hunt now to get their free stuff. And it's not just supercharging miles. It's enhanced autopilot. It's, you can get physical items. You can get a wall connector. You can get a CCS adapter.
Tesla Keela.
You can get Tesla Keela glasses. And so, it's a thing. Yeah. I think it helps. What do you think, Martin?
There is that joke that goes along the lines of, how do you know if somebody drives a Tesla? Oh, they will have told you. And in the early days, there was a huge amount of evangelism.
Sure.
And
it was exciting.
You know what? And the Tesla referral scheme came in there. There was a lot of influencers, a lot of vloggers and YouTube makers who really went hell for leather pushing their code, or they have whole Tesla channels devoted to it. And, they are the biggest fans. It made me smile. I'm a really, really big fan of Ride the Lightning. It's a weekly podcast with Ryan McCaffrey. I think he's got 2 Roadsters coming. He's been doing it forever. And he's so good at that. But just in the last few weeks, he does a Q&A section, and people have been saying, "Hey, I've got this problem. What do I do?" And on last week's show, somebody called in and said, I paid for FSD and I've never got it because my car is a little bit older. It's a Model S, and literally I can't get hold of anybody at Tesla to answer any. I literally can't get hold of anybody to answer my questions. I'm turning to you to a podcast. What do I do? And he sort of went, "Yeah, that's like a really good point. If you look at, I would have said tweet Elon Musk in the old days, but now it's just his Twitter is all about Twitter." He's like, "Yeah, God, this is really different to how it used to be," and kind of he's scratching his head. And I thought it's come a really long way from Tesla having this bulletproof reputation to the cars have been out a long time now, and some people have been through that cycle. And you meet people. I would never ever meet someone who had sold a Tesla years ago in the early EV world. Once you bought one, you were never driving anything else. They were that good. I meet loads of people now. Like, yeah, I used to have a Tesla. Now I've got this EQS or whatever, the EQC, or now I've got this Mustang Mach-E, and like that. The sheen has worn off. of Tesla. Not for everyone. Not for everyone.
Right.
And Martin, to that point, the process is actually, you were alluding to it a little bit. If you stick in their window of here's how you have to go about doing things, which is you buy the car in the app, you don't ask any questions, it shows up and you take it, you're good. But for example, my mom has a Model Y on order. She's driving a Genesis GV60. She's frustrated with a whole bunch of things, not with the car, just infrastructure related. They have the Lucid in the GV60, and they were going to sell their Model 3, I think, and they're going to get the Y. Anyway, my dad likes switching cars. They ordered the Model Y 4680. I suggested it would make some good videos because everyone says it's been a little bit lackluster, but the car will work well for their needs. And they ordered the car, they put in a trade-in request, and then it's just been silence. My dad has had another friend order the same car on the same day, and he's already driving it. And they still don't even have a production number. They don't know what their trade-in value is going to be. So, these types of things. And my dad's like, I know the people we used to work with when we would buy Teslas. And even they're like, we don't really know what to do. And so, you're lucky that you still know someone who's around from the early days. But
there used to be, I think it was called Tesla Engage or something? Or there was like this whole thing about engaging with the company. And now the guy running it, that whole program, well, he's gone or not doing it anymore. And it's like, well, Tesla really need to work with the people who, and I think they are. I see service centers opening all the time. I see the wait times getting shorter, not for everyone. I'm not talking, this is not, some people have real problems still. So I see them getting better at serving the people they've got already. But the bigger they get, and 1.5 million vehicles they'll make this year, the bigger they get, then the more, it's just a numbers game. The more people will have bad experiences. And yeah, I think that the referral scheme could be a way to try and persuade people to think better about the company when talking to their friends. They're like, well, yeah, I had these issues, but still use my code. I don't know. I think everyone operates in their own self-interest some of the time. So
yeah. And Martin, if you could bring up Bert Hagendorn's comment. And he says like he influences many people on the Sunshine Codes to buy, so referrals is helpful. My question to you, Bert, is do you work harder because it's a referral, or do you just influence people because you genuinely like electric vehicles and believe they're better? Because I've been doing that for years. And in the period where I owed my Teslas and I could get referrals, I didn't work harder to tell people about how much I love EVs and how much they're better than other cars. It didn't make me talk about it more. It made no effect. And maybe that's just me. And I'm curious to hear what you think. Are you working harder because you're getting something? So we'll wait for your comment.
I think there is a large number of people working harder.
And maybe it's just how I'm wired, Kyle.
Right. I think you're already all in though, Tom. You're
Tom,
already
for Tom, $160 on a car doesn't influence him. But let me tell you, I know some like Model S owners with free unlimited supercharging that go every day, and that 160, they're all over that.
So Bert just gave us his answer. He does it because he believes in them. So he
referrals are gravy.
The referrals are gravy. So basically, that's proving my point. You're not working harder, so that's what I'm trying to say there. Maybe there are some people, but I also believe for a good segment of the population that they're going to evangelize because they just think it's better and they want other people to experience what they've experienced. And maybe, I guess I stand corrected from what you guys are saying. I'm thinking in my, my thought process here and my vacuum, I guess that I've been telling people the EVs were great since 2009, and I never changed because I was getting a referral. And quite often, even when I had my referral, I never told somebody. Even when I was at a coffee shop and convinced somebody to buy a Tesla, I didn't say, "Oh, and by the way, here's my referral." Once in a while, I did, but more often than not, I didn't even mention that.
I've been around Tesla a long time. I've seen like owners in a showroom go, "Are you just buying a car? Oh, wait, let me here, use this."
Right.
Yeah.
We're right up over our time. This is one of our longest shows ever. That's fine. I mean, I don't mind. I've got nothing better
one
to
more
do.
thing I want to point out before you leave. Dom,
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed it, but Eric Loveday, our managing editor at Inside EVs, posted a bunch of links in our Teams chat just today about he found these like 5 different blog posts that said, what are the best electric vehicle podcasts out there? Inside EVs was like either first or second in like all of them. And Martin mentioned Ride the Lightning was right up there too. It was almost like we were battling them for first or second in all of this. So thanks to all our followers for making us, the one of the most sought after podcasts to watch on electric vehicles. We appreciate that.
Yeah, we have a great audience.
Must be really garbage out there if that's the case.
Hey, so I know we're kind of late and everything, but I did want to mention one thing I wanted to get Kyle's reaction. If she saw the ID7 station wagon?
Yes.
Because
but you knew it was coming because even Arteon has the wagonish thing over there that we've driven. So it's just going to be great. But what I'm really excited for, and I think it's actually going to come here, is the Audi wagon.
Which one? That's
I don't think it has a thing. By the way, I'm going to drive the Q8 e-tron on Monday, so I don't know when I'm not able to talk about it, but I'm going to drive it this week.
At the very beginning of the show, somebody was saying they're buying the ones coming to their house. Q8 e-trons coming to their house, being delivered in Florida.
I actually think the media drive cars arrived late, and so I probably could have gotten one from our Audi dealership earlier. Which I didn't even think about until right now. So maybe I'll actually cancel that and see if our dealer has one, so I don't have to take another trip.
Yeah, I want to hear your driving impressions because they're on the roads here already, and they look the same as your e-tron.
Well, that was the plan, was to take our e-tron out and actually do a range test and a 10% challenge against each other. And I was talking to Alyssa about it because she loves her e-tron. That's you can't pry this thing from her. But I'm like, maybe we could get a QA and get the S with the 3-motor thing, and maybe that's what she wants to drive. And she basically said she looked at, this is from Alyssa. She said, I studied the charging curve and it's not as good as my car.
Awesome!
Wow.
Oh no! You've
awesome.
You've broken Alyssa. Yeah, she's looking at charge curves. Oh my goodness!
It was Bill B early in the show who said he hopes to take delivery of his Audi e-tron Q8 in a few days. And
can't wait to hear what he thinks about it.
I think
under the
Jacksonville
skin
or something.
Very different, vastly improved.
A lot more range. 100 miles more range usable is a big deal.
It's huge. I followed one down the road last week, and then after a few miles, that's Q8. Okay, because I wasn't even looking for it, but I saw the badge on the back and thought, right, that just looks the same as the old one. I think the front is a lot more. Is
got a little weird bumper thing, but the rest of it seems the same. And I'm not 100% sure if you can even get all the luxury features that, at least in the US, that our e-tron has. So there was an e-tron first edition that could get night vision and all that stuff, which was really cool. Then there was after that, you couldn't get it. And so I don't know what, I got to spec one out, but I'm looking forward to it. Either way, I'm going to try and drive one at our dealer. If they don't have one, I got to fly out to Napa on Monday to do it, but worth the flight.
One other thing I really wanted to mention, I know we're way over, but Ford is cutting its 2023 F-150 Lightning XLT extended range price by $2,100, I believe, to get under the tax credit. And that's kind of the Ford Lightning, the F-150 Lightning has gone up in price over the last few months, a substantial amount. So this is be some relief for some owners, I believe. I don't know, Tom, if you have a couple words you want to say about this, because you probably have more knowledge about it than anybody else about it.
Yeah, I think it's probably the way to go now. If you don't have a lot of money to burn, rather than getting a Lariat like I did, the XLT trim is really nice, and you can get it with the extended range now and still get the federal tax credit. I think that's probably the trim to order, unless you've got a ton of money to burn. That's a good deal on Ford, making an extended range version truck available to the public that still qualifies for the tax credit, because the public can't buy the Pro with the extended range battery pack. Their commercial customers can. So the way the pricing was before, no Lightnings that anybody could purchase would qualify for the 7,500. that had the extended range battery pack. Most people are ordering these with the extended range battery pack. So that was good that they were able to sneak one under the limit to get that tax credit. And on the topic of Lightning, I just want to mention quickly, I'm a member of the Northeast Lightning Club, and we occasionally have meets. Okay. And we're planning the next meet in June 17th. And if you own a Lightning, more details are going to emerge on this really soon. But if you own a Lightning and you're free on the June 17th, reserve that, because it's going to be a very good event to be at. I don't want to release the rest of the details. It's going to be held in northern New Jersey, and it's going to be a real fun time. But only Lightning owners or somebody driving up with a Lightning is admitted. So if I rent a Lightning reservation holder or somebody who's a Lightning fan, you will not get in if you don't drive up with an F-150 Lightning. But it's going to be a fun event.
Tom, what if I rent a Lightning, or if I get a review truck? Am I allowed?
If you pull up in the driveway with a Lightning, Kyle, you'll be allowed. Okay, but if you pull up in your dad's Lucid, the bouncers will escort you to the gate.
I don't think he's getting that thing back. I'm keeping it.
Oh man, poor Lucid. They're struggling so much, but it's such a great car, right?
In many ways, yes.
Yeah, and a lot. Yeah, it's not perfect like anything, but
it's
you're enjoying it, right?
I haven't driven it much since the Cannonball, but there's really a lot to like about that car for sure.
Right, and if you want to get a good look at that Lucid Air, actually, if you go on Out of Spec Detailing, there's a wonderful, relaxing video you can watch for like 16 minutes of it just being watched. It's like an ASMR. There's no talking.
I didn't know about that video till after it went live, and I was like, "Wow, we're doing this now. This is good."
I like it. I like it. It's enjoyable. It's a different kind of content. But people like seeing things cleaned up like that. And
I'm glad to see Colton shaking it up. Would like to see more of that.
Yeah. All right. So I think that brings us to the end of our show.
Geez, we might as well go for 4 more minutes.
Well,
and
maybe I should
hours,
mention,
for Christ's sake.
I'm driving the Volvo V60 Polestar this week. I haven't talked about it, so don't let me forget to talk about it next week, because I also drove the new Cayenne plug-in hybrid, both of which I'll be able to talk about next week.
Sure, that'd be great. If you can remind me, just so I don't forget.
Okay. But that's why I'm telling you.
I'll try to make notes here. I'll make the notes here somewhere.
I'll forget.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of our show. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them on the Inside EV's forum podcast thread or on our YouTube or Twitch comment sections. If you like the show, please give us a thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube. If you didn't like the show, please give us a thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube. Don't forget you can find and follow our panelists on Twitter. Follow Tom Mologney at Tomolog, that's with 2 M's. Martin Lee is at EV News Daily. Kyle Connor is at It's Kyle Connor. And I'm at Dominic on post.news and Mastodon and Spoutable. Click subscribe and tap that bell icon for notifications. And thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you all again next week. Ciao.